Okay. I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School Board of Directors to order. We'll start with our board priorities, and I would ask Director Hayes to read those, please.
Be happy to. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Number one, provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Number two, direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. Director DeFoe, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Certainly. Our mission: to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And our vision: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. We have recognitions, which is a little bit different because it's recognizing school boards, and we have, it looks like, about 3 different recognitions. Anthony DeSalvo, I think, is not here.
Anthony will not be able to attend this evening, but we have 3 speakers
that
have a few words to say to you, and I really appreciate you allowing us this time.
Sure.
We don't often take enough time to say thank you, and this is our moment. So without any further ado, we're going to have you hear from the Honorable Bill Gluba, Mayor of the City of Davenport.
Good evening, School Board Chair Johansson, school board members, Superintendent Dr. Tate, wherever he's at, ladies and gentlemen. As mayor, I'm delighted and proud to be here tonight to show my appreciation and that of the members of the Davenport City Council for all the great initiatives this school board has put in place to improve the education of all our Davenport students. You know, it's been shown throughout history, or throughout the history of mankind, that education has an immense impact on human society. This school board clearly understands that obtaining a good education and achieving a high school diploma is more important today than ever before, as, quote, brain far surpasses brawn as the most sought-after skill in the workplace today and in the world. You understand that. We all know that life is not always fair, but I believe as city fathers and school board members, we together understand our job is to try to make it more fair for all, especially our children, and especially in the field of education. For as Horace Mann, the first great educational reformer in America and the father of the common school movement, said, quote, "Education, above all other devices of human origin, is a great equalizer of the condition of men," unquote. Tonight, I'd like to commend this school board and you as members for volunteering your time and for having a vision which is in keeping with the philosophy that Horace Mann enunciated some 180 years ago. By recognizing the fact, for example, that 1 out of every 4 children in Davenport comes from a poverty family, and that about 68% of these children qualify for free or reduced meals, compared to a state average for districts of 40%. We're at 68% because of the nature of our community. You had the courage to address the educational challenges these facts present, especially the dropout rate, which you have been successful in reducing from a state high of about 10.2% in 2011-2012 to, I think it's about 4.2 or 4.8% today. What a job. What an accomplishment in a short period of time. Now, you've done a lot of other things to help address this issue. You faced up to the transportation issue, which was sort of part of the dropout issue. You identified 7 schools with a high number of chronic absences. You were able to identify some 40 students who were missing more than 11% of the school days in one school year. Obviously, they got to go to school to get the education so they don't drop out. And you found 40 of them who were not showing up very often or as much as they need to be. To accomplish this, as I understand it, you partnered with parents, you partnered with the community, because I remember we went a number of different efforts to have address the dropout rate. And you identified the barriers that prevented the students from attending school. I don't know what they all are. Some of them just didn't get up in the morning. Some of them didn't have a way to school. Some of them apparently didn't have the motivation. And you put in place lots of things that got them to school. You plotted, for example, I guess 5 routes for the bus service to pick up students who live south of Locust. Took the time, someone did, to figure that all out. You addressed early childhood and kindergarten readiness by providing additional preschool access to 4-year-olds to assure that they are ready for kindergarten. We all know early childhood education is the key. They'll stay in school. Chances of graduating are higher if they stay abreast. I mean, they're learning at that early age. We never used to do that years ago, but you're doing it very well. You improve the school climate and training by adding new components, a new component called Who We Are, to help staff members with information on social economic status and ethnic minorities and program opportunities within the district. You created a professional development series for staff to help them understand the impact of poverty on education. That's probably the most significant thing teachers and you have done as a school board in years. We have a unique city, not unique, we're similar to most big cities, but the poverty rate's high, and you are making it more understandable to teachers. And I think hopefully they're all going to be reading the book, Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis by Robert D. Putnam, which we made available, which talks about, it's not like it was when I graduated in 60. He talks about the way things were in 1959, totally different today. So you've done that for the teachers. You've given them the incentives and the ideas and the inspiration to start thinking about poverty and how it affects kids today in their classrooms. You create a professional development series, again, to help teachers understand that. And for the first time that I recall, the Davenport School Board became a serious advocate before the governor in the state legislature to address the per pupil funding inequity that so negatively impacts our Davenport students. The Davenport School Board certainly made their mark. You made your mark on the debate, educational debate, before the governor and the legislature like no other school board has ever done. Dr. Tate went out on the limb. You went out on the limb early on, but I see later almost every school district in the state got behind your effort, your vision, your initiative. That's a real big credit to you. And it's sad they didn't get the job done up there, but it's not because you didn't try. You were the leaders across the state, no doubt about it. This school board in Davenport led the fight. Your school superintendent led the fight. And to your credit, you sat down last month in another area to the first joint meeting in the history of the Davenport schools in the city of Davenport, City Council, to discuss with the city as to how we might more actively collaborate and work together on innovative ways to further improve our Davenport schools. The good news is today, I think we have an excellent relationship with our friends and partners at the Davenport schools. The City Council now is packed with alums, current and former teachers, current and former Davenport school parents. A number of them have kids in our schools, in your schools. And they, as you, want to see the best results possible. And we as a city, and I as mayor, are going to make sure that happens. And I believe that we've all come to realize the basic truth that as our schools go, so goes the city, and vice versa. So I want to congratulate you all. Thank you for your volunteer time and commitment. I mean, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how Ralph and the rest of them spend the time at this, but I commend you and I salute you for the good work you're doing. Keep it up, and you can count on the city to be full and complete partners in any way we possibly can. God bless you, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mayor Gluba. John, you've got...
Anthony DeSalvo had 2 back-to-back baseball games tonight, so he's unable to join us. But Mickey Sloat, who will be a junior at Central High this fall, is here to represent the students.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mickey Sloat. I was asked to come up here today to thank the school board, and I thought, great, it's about time. So I come before you tonight to remind you that knowledge is power. And as a school district, we've worked hard to possess both. We took a stance for what we believe in, like so many others before us, and we asked for nothing more than equality. We stood up for the ideal that no one, no matter what socioeconomic situation, gender, race, or creed, education is equally valid. Now that's what I call a worthy cause. My peers and I have been getting a lot of accolades for wearing t-shirts, but without people's support, we're exactly that, a bunch of kids wearing worthless t-shirts. You gave us a voice when no one else would listen. You gave us a voice, and you gave us power. We made a difference. We gathered attention, and we made some waves. And most importantly, you lead by example. So if that isn't proving how knowledge is power, I don't know what is. So on behalf of all the students in this district and districts across Iowa, I would like to thank you for your courage, initiative, perseverance, and most importantly, your knowledge and power. Thank you.
And finally, we're going to have a few words from Vera Kelly, president of the NAACP.
Good evening. My name is Vera Kelly, and I'm the president of the Metrocon branch number 4019 in Davenport, and also on a lot of other organizations here in the city. First, I would like to say I thank the school board for all that they do, but I mostly want to thank Bill Sherwood, who was a great man, and he needs to be recognized for starting poverty. He spoke what he thought was right and better for kids within the school district and the community, for making the school a place for learning. Bill Sherwood, rest in peace. We are moving forward to make your dream alive. Thanks to the school board for stepping up and reading Dr. Donna Beagle's book, discussing the impact of poverty related to education in our district, then to take action to reduce poverty in all the schools. As Dr. Donna Beagle says in her book, when you see it, be different and work to make a difference. So since all the poverty groups has been doing things in the community, we have learned 4 things, and they are stop, look, listen, and learn. Stop. Then say, am I making a difference to improve poverty? Look all around the resources that put in before us to make a difference. Listen to others, as all ideas are great for working tools. Learn how to work in unity because poverty is not colorblind. We have a great school district, superintendent, school board, staff, and community. Whatever position we hold, we work together with our tools and material to make a difference. Let us stop talking about it and be about it. And in my closing, I say like LBJ, Poverty is not be a bar to learning, but must offer escape for poverty. And thank you all for listening.
You know, all of your words are amazingly humbling from my perspective. And this is a presentation. I'm going to open it up for comments from the board before I say anything else. Anybody from the board want to say anything? If not, Director Clough.
Just thank you. I'm totally unexpected to have the mayor here and Vera and Mickey. We've all worked together to make things happen that you've talked about. It's been a partnership, but I appreciate the accolades, and we will continue to work at the same rate of pay that we have, and try to get more results. And you know, Mayor Gluba talked about Horace Mann, and Horace Mann is an idol of mine. I think he was so far in front, and we still have not accomplished many of the ideas that he set out. He said at one point, he said, education is our only political safety. Outside of this ark, all is deluge. That's how important education is, and I thank you for your support. We'll keep it up.
Anybody else? Director Dickman.
I think that as a board, when we get to hear one of our students come up and be that well-spoken, that that's a sign we're doing our job. And hey, keep doing what you're doing, and we're really glad to have you guys on board and involved.
Anybody else? Director Crumwoody.
I too just would like to thank Mayor Gluba and all of you for your words, including the telephone message that we just received. Somebody's future's calling, yes. Thank you very much. We, as Mayor Gluba has mentioned, over the past several months, we have experienced, I think, really a more positive relationship with the city and with NAACP and things we're doing together. And, of course, our initiative with the funding issue really got the community involved, got especially the students and parents and the rest of the community involved. And so we thank you, because we as a board can't do those things alone. It takes all of us working together, and we appreciate your help and your support in our efforts. So thanks to all of you for recognizing us, and we certainly appreciate your support.
Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, I was rather stunned when I saw you in the audience, and I thought, what are they here for tonight? And then I recalled later on when Mary told me, oh yeah, it's Board Recognition Month. Oh yeah, but I think the work that we all do together, I do think oftentimes of our great community, and the community it's part of the city, the school district, and it's all of us that are working together. And and I have to say that I'm inspired by all three of you as you were talking and speaking, and I aspire to be more like you in so many ways. I think that all three of you are fantastic leaders. I think, Mayor Gluba, that you always do an amazing job in promoting our district and our community and our city. And Vera, I just cannot say enough about you. When I talk about you and our community and how I wish everybody could be more like you. You do everything. You volunteer, and I just wish more people could could see how well you do all these things and how involved you are in everything. And Mickey, I'm just stunned, and I have been for the past several months. Your involvement in all of this activity that we've gotten into, and your work on the video, and your work with the other students. So I just want to say thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I'm glad that we, the board, and that I, Ralph, can be part of this, and I can say not only I'm inspired and I aspire to be like you, I love you guys. I really do. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything you do. All right. Well, with that, we're going to continue our business. Thank you. Okay. We'll start with communications. Director Crumwitty, you want to read our upcoming events?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. President. June 12th, 10 a.m., Central groundbreaking at Central High School. On June 12th, the start of summer hours, the ASC will be closed every Friday through August 14th. June 16th at 5:30 p.m., Ilziak here at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. On June 18th, from 6 to 7:30, we will have a pre-candidate workshop here at ASC and the Jim Hester Boardroom, and Director DeFaw and I will be leading that workshop. On June 22nd at 6 p.m. Is a regular school board meeting here at ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. July 1st at 4 p.m., Policy Committee, ASC Executive Boardroom. July 6th, 5:30, Committee of the Whole, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. And let me see here. Okay, July 13th at 6 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. And I want to go up to the pre-candidate workshop. I mentioned Director DeFaw and myself, but also Mary Carruthers, our school board secretary, will be, the three of us will be running that workshop for folks interested in running for the 4 seats that are up for school board election this year.
Thank you very much. Next is open forum. We have one open forum request. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We have one open forum request that is from Barb Park. Please come up to the microphone, Barb. Give us your name and address, and we'll give you a liberal 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'm Barb Park, as you might remember. I live at 3820 Kenwood Avenue, and I did turn in a more extensive appeal last Monday at your private board meeting, and I realized my appeal process is over. But I'm here because I've got a new deal, and it's probably out of your hands. It's more in the superintendent's hands. But I just wanted to share with you because it's so exciting. So in the words of FDR, I've got a new deal. I've stumbled across some new information this past week. A good friend of mine, her son Josh, who is a theatrical individual who my son has acted at Circa and several area theaters together with, has decided the last week of May to skip 8th grade and enroll at Central High School, and he made the show choir, the prestigious show choir. He's a very intelligent young man, and he's a phenomenal theatrical performer. But there's one issue. Josh and his family live in Bettendorf, and they're begging Bettendorf School Board to release him to open enroll him to Central. I think that sounds familiar. Just reverse. I believe that this information should be revealed to both boards and superintendents of Bettendorf and Davenport school districts, because this is a tit for a tat. This is equal trade. It's a Davenport district freshman wanting to be released to go to Bettendorf, and a Bettendorf district freshman wanting to be released to go to Davenport. So come October 2016, when the schools have to turn in their student council for the state, if both Elizabeth and Josh are released, it means Davenport would have to give Bettendorf Elizabeth's money. Bettendorf would have to give Davenport Josh's money. So I'm thinking it's a win-win situation. It solves the economic issue. And I just please consider working out this new deal for these two outstanding kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb, for your advocacy and your approach on new ideas. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Cromedy.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, call for the vote. Director Cromedy?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by the administration on payment of bills. The resolution is as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board, having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the period of 21 May 2015 through 3 June 2015 with the following voided check, and that being check number 328080, payable to Ortel Sheet Metal in the amount of $184, and that was made out to the wrong vendor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any additional discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Cromedy?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I believe you skipped item 4 on the agenda.
No, it's actually board reports. You're correct, and I appreciate you pointing that out to me. We've had a change in our agenda recently, which calls for board reports before the consent agenda. Since I missed them, we'll go to that right now. Are there any board reports? Director Dickman.
I got to fill in for Director Kluhl at the Regional Vision Executives Club on Friday, and the take-home point was to sum it up, don't wait. That they're trying to get everyone moving in the same direction, but like the initiatives that we're already taking, not to hold up and say, oh well, what's everyone else doing, but to continue moving forward and going, if we see something great, to keep going with it. And so that was exciting.
Thank you. Any additional reports? Director DeFau.
Director Cromwitty, Mary, and myself have met already to review the agenda for the presentation that we'll be having on the 18th for persons interested in school board candidacy. And in that conversation, we arrived at the decision that we were going to respectfully request that seated board members not attend. The reason being is that this is a program that is designed to help inform people that are not familiar with the school board and how it functions and the process of applying. Those of you that are seated are at least familiar with that process. I know Linda hasn't run per se, but we believe that it would be in the best interest of the candidates to be able to have the time that they need, the potential candidates, to ask questions and get our feedback. So again, we can't force you. We do ask that you consider our request, and if you do choose to attend, sit down in the back and observe without comment. Thank you.
Any additional board reports? I'm trying to think if it's appropriate for me to respond to to that. It probably isn't, but I will say that I really, really appreciate, and I think the board really appreciates, all of the work that that committee is putting into putting together that session. And I had actually planned on being there just because I was so intrigued, and I think it'll be interesting, but I'll yeah, I know. Anyway, thank you very much for those board reports. All right, now we'll move on to the superintendent report. Mr. Scott, is there anything to report?
Is this where I can talk about an event I attended on Saturday?
Sure.
Okay. I did attend the Reese Morgan Basketball Summer League that was hosted on Saturday at Centennial Park. It was a great event. It's held, this is the 6th year that they've had the event. Gene Chisholm from Wood takes up a major lead role in that for the efforts. Mayor Gluba was there. The Davenport Police All-Stars played the high school All-Stars in a basketball game. We had one of our own return, James Jones, a Davenport Central grad, came back, former NFL star, and spoke there. And I was honored to be there and accepted an award on behalf of Davenport's involvement with the Summer League.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding approval of additional community eligibility provision schools?
Mr. President,
Director Dickman.
I move the administration's recommendation that the addition of the three following schools, to the community eligibility provision, allowing service of breakfast and lunch to all enrolled students at no charge: Children's Village Lincoln, Davenport Learning Center, and McKinley Elementary.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Dickman.
I was reading up on this, and it sounds like we're adding these because it's a success. So I'm very glad to hear that the program is working.
Any additional discussion? Director Crumity.
It's probably a question for Mickey. I'm just curious as how the sites are determined. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, community eligibility provision is for low-income schools, and the way they decide if you qualify or not is they base it on what they term the identified student population, and those are students that qualify for free meals based on participation in other federal programs such as food assistance, or being in foster care, or homeless students. not by an actual application for free meals. So it's the schools that have high percentage of participation of families in basically the food assistance programs.
Okay. So how many schools does that include now?
With the addition of the 3, it will be 20 of our school buildings. And it's almost 50% of the people we feed. It's about 4,800, and we feed a little over 10,000 a day.
Okay. Thanks.
Director Kluhl.
I was reading some of the literature, and the CEP program is federal, but there's also a mixture of state funds involved with this program.
There are there's a state match for school meals here in Iowa. I think it's around 4 to 6 cents a meal that is served. Often the state, they earmark a certain amount of money, and so if it runs out in March or April, it runs out. So there is a small bit of state funding that goes to fund free and reduced meals here in Iowa.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I'm trying to think back when this first came up, and the way that a school is eligible, I think, is based on a percentage of students that are eligible for free and reduced. Is that correct? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, it is based on the percentage of students that qualify, but through other federal programs. It's not people that apply by application. So community eligibility provision, people that can be directly certified from the state, primarily here in Davenport, is going to be people that participate in the food stamp program. And they send us those names every month. And in addition to the people that get food assistance, there are our foster care students that are certified through the state, or any of our homeless students. It would also cover in other areas migrant students, but there are people that qualify for meals without the family actually applying. In order to qualify for CEP, you have to have at least 40% of your students in that range.
So where I'm going is that if that's the case on a per school basis, and we had quite a discussion when you brought this forward originally, but clearly then we have more than 40% of our district in the same situation, and more than 40% of our schools. Is it possible to just get our whole district onto that plan on the same basis instead of on a per school basis?
No, because it is on a per school basis. So we have schools that don't meet that 40% of students on food assistance, so they would not qualify under the federal guidelines. So we have to do every school and put whether they qualify or not by the individual building. And we have schools, our high schools would not qualify, and neither would several of our more affluent elementary schools.
But that's just based on current law.
Correct, current federal law. Correct.
So you could probably get that changed. Yeah. So.
There you go.
Oh, the other question I had is what is the? I remember there being less reporting required if we went this direction, right? But there must be some downside to the whole thing. Is it lack of data? I don't recall what happens, because a lot of the students then don't have to report, right? And then do we lose information? Do we lose something?
What you lose is a lot of information is tied to a student's free and reduced status. For example, some of the Title I funds, or possibly getting payment for AP exams. The way the district has dealt with that is now there's a household economic survey that families fill out that report that data to our IT department, and then that's kept in Infinite Campus. So we now have a way to collect that data, and it's not tied to somebody's lunch status.
Okay, but from what you know, we aren't actually losing anything financial in another area, it's being covered by something like that.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
great. Thank you.
They have taken great strides to make sure that those other areas are covered.
Okay.
So.
Director Kluhl?
How successful have we been in getting those household economic surveys back?
That would be a question more for Marcia, because I'm not involved in that process.
Not as successful as we would like. For the coming year, we are going to require that every household fill out a survey, but they will have the option to say that they do not wish to apply for free fee waiver. Basically what it is it waives the fees, and they can check that box and say they don't wish to apply. But we got together and decided that if that was a form that was required of all households, that we would get a better rate of return.
I was just curious, I mean, there are a lot of times when we have to report, like you said, our Title I free and reduced meals. I don't know how we do that without, are we just projecting somehow what we expect it is?
Well, as far as you still have some parents that apply for meals, so you will pick up, if they have students in a non-CEP school and a CEP school, that information carries over for all students. Again, 44% of our population qualifies for meals without any application because of their participation in the other programs I mentioned previously. So we're really not missing a whole lot of people. Okay. But we are, they're not having to fill out applications to get the benefit. Plus, it kind of equalizes the playing field when everybody in the school gets to eat for free. You overcome some of the status of that being you're, free and you eat at school. Everybody gets to eat, and so it sort of evens that playing field and makes it equal for everyone.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we'll go ahead and take the vote. Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Crumwoody.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of the Central High Roof Replacement Project?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation for the lowest responsible and responsive bid of $259,500 to Blackhawk Roofing Company of Cedar Falls, Iowa for the Central High School roof replacement project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeFow.
It's quite a significant discrepancy both in the bids that were received as well as what was budgeted for the project. Would you like to speak to that?
Sure. The bids that were received is an example of some of the wide variation that we get in bids, particularly when there's a lot of work in the market. Maybe a few firms will throw a bid out at a pretty high price, thinking if they get the work great, they'll staff up to do it. And another firm, in this case Blackhawk Roofing, was willing to bid it at a more competitive price because they didn't have as much work going on. And we saw this kind of range of variation in a number of the bid packages on this project. The other thing to note about the difference between the bid amount was that we had bid this in two alternatives. There was a base bid and an alternative bid. The base bid, which is recommended for award here, is that work which necessarily needed to be done in association with the addition of the pool. The alternate bid, which was about $700,000, if memory serves, was a larger section of the roof, and that's a piece that we've deferred to a future year in order to make the cash model work for the difference in the budget and the bid amount. So we've recommended doing only that work which is necessary in association with the pool, which was the base bid. The budget covered both.
But you will, in essence, be coming back with a second project at some time in the future.
Yes, in a future year, we'll be coming back to do that other section of the roof.
And will this existing work that's being done have any impact positively or negatively on that future project?
No, they're actually not physically connected. They're adjacent. They're at different levels. But this is the package that's necessarily done in conjunction with the addition of the pool building.
Additional discussion. Director Klohl.
What's the life expectancy of the roof?
Typically, they're 30, 35 years. The roofs that we've been doing as of late, we've been getting a 30-year warranty and somewhere around 30 years. This is a rather unusual roof. It has had some repairs in the recent past, and we, after huddling up with the staff and our architect who'd been looking at this, think that we can defer this for 3 to 5 years without incurring any damage. And so we've tried to move it out. We're not quite done with the entire long-range plan, but we wanted to move it out far enough that it didn't impact other projects that were already in the plan schedule.
Thank you.
Additional discussion. When you said defer it, and I can't get my computer up right now, so some of it I can't get to that I wanted to, but you said move it out a little bit. What are you talking about?
Somewhere between 3 and 5 years.
And so when you said that, I started thinking about the difference in technology over time. Does roofing technology change much? Has it changed much? Is it going to change much?
You know, there haven't been radical changes in roofing technology in the recent past. I think perhaps 20 years or more ago, there were some new synthetic membranes introduced, and we're using one of those on many projects, however, not this one. But the technology doesn't really change very quickly on roof systems.
All right. Any additional discussion? Call for the vote. Director Klohl.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of city bus?
Mr. President,
Director DeFow.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the use of city bus by the Davenport Community School District students for the 2015-16 school year, pending approval of the agreement by the city of Davenport.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klohl.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order for Fillmore?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve a change order in the amount of $65,672.89 for hometown plumbing and heating for the work at Fillmore Elementary.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Crumwitty.
I'm just curious about this has to do with hometown plumbing and heating. Do you anticipate any other change orders?
Yes, I believe there have already been a couple presented, and I think this, let me check with Mr. Page, I think this is the last one for pre-K? This will be the last one for pre-K. Yes, so this will be the last of those change orders. The others have already been before you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any additional discussion? Okay, call for the vote. Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klohl.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of graduation and alliance?
Mr. President.
Oh, Director, was it Director
Oh.
Dickman or Hayes? Director Dickman.
All right. I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve the contract with Graduation Alliance, Inc., which is a fee-for-service arrangement with the potential of having a value in excess of $50,000 per year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? Director Dickman.
I know that this is just for students who have dropped out and are not responding to regular ways of trying to get them to graduate, but I'm still a little skeptical that they will get the same skills that they would if they actually came to a building doing online arrangements and only having a contact person some of the time. As it's budget neutral, I will support it anyway, but I have reservations about whether or not it is equivalent.
Director Clue.
I wonder if somebody in administration could talk about why it is that we decided to contract this out rather than do it in-house.
We've got Pam Kirsch here that I know can speak to it. She's been working directly with Marcia also and Dr. Tate on this. Thank you, Pam.
Good evening. This is an online program, so just like what you would have in a college program where you've got a teacher at the other end of the computer. So there is the Iowa licensed teacher that is online at the other end and a local person that's being that contact to kind of push them and encourage them. But there is an Iowa licensed teacher at the other end of the computer. So just like an online college course that you would take, this is the same type of program that we're talking about. And the students that we are aiming to serve are those that we have done outreach to. We have extended all the opportunities that we can in the Davenport Community School District, but these are the students that either won't come to the school building because of anxiety issues, mental illness, a whole myriad of issues that we cannot get them to come through the doors of our building. So these are the students that we're trying to target that we cannot get to come back in any other way.
So this organization has a track record of being able to reach those students?
Yes, we've vetted this for over 2 years, trying to look at the different things that they have to offer. So we want to offer this as an opportunity for those students that we can't reach.
And it's just a more efficient process to contract this out than it would be to try to do it in-house. That's obviously
We
the
haven't found a way to
consideration.
even do it in-house because of the online things that we have is not a comprehensive program, and it's also tied to the teachers that we have, certified teachers that we have in our district. So the students still have to come through the doors of the building. They still have to come in and work with those teachers. And this program allows them to have that flexibility so that they don't have to come through the doors of the building if they don't feel that they can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Director Hayes.
I guess I have some concerns with the program I saw maybe 10, 14 targeted students. If they will not come through the doors, I guess my concern is, will they do the online work to continue it? How is that monitored?
It's monitored through the caseworker that Graduation Alliance will hire to work with that student individually, as well as I will have access to the complete computer program so I can look to see the status of the students at any time. I can see if they're progressing, so I'll be monitoring that from inside the district as well. Mm-hmm.
Director DeFau.
And can I ask, how many months out of the year will the student be actively studying curriculum through the program?
It depends on the student and their need. As long as the student is actively participating in the program, they will continue to work with them. If they're not going to be actively participating in the program, then the district won't be charged for that student.
And what constitutes actively participating?
If they're not active within a month or for a month, they'll give them the opportunities. That caseworker is going to be looking at them. They're going to be talking to them and saying, what's going on? Are you getting on? They're going to be doing the encouraging piece. And if they're not continuing on with that, then they are the ones that supply the laptop. They'll take that laptop back And we can find another student to take that spot if necessary.
So is it possible that a student would be actively studying curriculum 12 months out of the year?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. So at a cost of $725 per month per student, I'm not quite understanding how that's a budget neutral cost.
The contract will say that we cannot go over our per pupil dollar amount that the state allows us.
And does this contract that we have in front of us stipulate that?
As far as I know, I haven't looked at it that
Does
extensively.
anybody else recall seeing that?
That's what
Okay.
they have said, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? All right, call for the vote. Director Dickman,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Crumwitty,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Kluhl,
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of policy?
In a moment.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Excuse me?
I said Mr. President.
Yes, yeah, sorry, I was doing too many things at once. Yes, Director DeFau.
I move that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation and approve policy 702.01 selection of architect, engineer, CMA.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I
Director
just,
DeFau.
I just would reiterate that this is a policy that's come before the board, at least on one occasion, perhaps twice, as we've been working with it to refine the criteria. And I know that there was some ongoing concern at the policy committee level relevant to the financial thresholds that were established. But I believe that the committee is now satisfied that those numbers are reasonable.
Any additional discussion? Director Kluhl.
Would we ever expect that unsolicited proposals would be common?
One was too many, in my opinion, and I feel like it was a circumvention of the process, and that's why it was brought forward as a matter of concern to the policy committee, and the committee is comfortable with the policy as stated so as to prevent the submission of unsolicited proposals or someone looking at the long-range facility plan and saying, well, gosh, I think I'm perfectly suited to do that project that's on the schedule 3 years from now, so I think I'll put in an unsolicited proposal and accelerate the process. This policy will prevent that from happening.
Was there anything more, Director Kluhl?
No, I just thought there was some discussion about unsolicited proposals that was a little more strongly stated than this, but I appreciate what's here and the work that the policy committee went to do this, and I'm sure it's watertight.
Any additional discussion? Well, I gotta say, I don't know if it's watertight, but it was a real conundrum when it came up. And I think it caught the administration and the board off guard, and both had to deal with it in the best way that they knew how. I am hopeful that this policy will catch that sort of thing, and yet provide opportunities for certain types of unsolicited proposals, but especially not in capital projects, so that the district can continue to be more and more efficient by working with a lot of our consultants and contractors. So I hope it's a good policy. Director DeFau.
If I may, just for the audience's benefit, I will read the section that is in question and that we're conversing about. Item 3 in this policy states that unsolicited proposals for capital improvement projects may be offered to the operations director for consideration. It will be the responsibility of the operations director to secure these proposals in a sealed envelope and to secure those envelopes in a secure locked location. The proposals will be opened at the time that proposals for specified projects are allowed to be accepted, and the operations director will develop appropriate systems for logging and accounting for these proposals. So, in effect, someone could submit an unsolicited proposal for a capital improvement project, but it would sit in a sealed envelope until the time that the administration brought that project forward for bid process at some point in the future. It would not be accepted and opened and considered on its own merit.
Thank you for that clarification. Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Crumwoody?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to discussion items. We'll start with the IASB UEN membership. I cannot get my computer up, so I can't
Here.
bring those up. Yeah, maybe. I'm going to ask Director Kluhl, or Vice President Kluhl, while I'm bringing this up, if you wouldn't mind bringing these up and starting the discussion on each one of them.
The Urban Education Network is asking for the same subscription prices they have for the last several years, $8,500 per year. And as I recall, the Iowa Association of School Boards was $11,400. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that is the amount. By way of explanation of my experience with the associations this year, the Urban Education Network, we have worked with extensively, and with, I would say, with legislative activities by themselves, we have gotten $8,500 worth of work from Margaret Buckton. So we have definitely got a value for our dollar with the Urban Education Network. With the Iowa Association of School Boards, I can speak legislatively. Again, we've dealt with Mary Gannon and Emily Piper, with the executive director, with the deputy executive director, Galen Hauser. Worked with them on legislative issues. They've been very supportive. But I would like Director Crumwoody to talk about some of his activities as well with the Iowa Association.
Well, that kind of caught me off guard, but I think this is a very critical year for the Davenport Board to be involved with both of these organizations. We have worked diligently with both UEN and the Iowa School Board Association. They provided, both of those organizations provided us support in our funding initiative. And of course, Margaret has worked hours and hours with us as far as talking to legislators. The Iowa School Board Association has given us the information that we needed to show us what school districts are in the same or similar situation that we're in. I do think that we have made a lot of progress this year in making other school districts, both small and large districts, rural districts, aware of this funding inequity situation. So I think it would be important for the board to continue working with both of these organizations for the next year to make sure that we continue with our initiative. Also, with our involvement, as you know, I'm on the Legislative Resolutions Committee. I would hope that this board would submit one resolution, and that has to do with the equity issue. And I will work very hard to convince the rest of the LRC that that should be our resolutions. I think we need to come to the convention. I think we need to have several voices there talking about the inequity situation so we can see some action this coming year. And I do think this is a very critical year for us to be involved with both of these organizations. So I will certainly support this. I also think that as I step down from this board, I'll still be involved with the Legislative Resolutions Committee because I'm an at-large member, so I can serve as a member of the Area Education Agency. But I think we should also consider getting more people from the Davenport Board involved in LRC and other committees in Iowa School Board Association and also UEN.
And I want to thank Director Crumwoody for the work that he did for getting us off zero on equality with the funding formula. He was able to get that recognized as a priority, not a high enough priority, but it was a start. So we have a good foothold for this coming year.
Any additional discussion? Director DeFau.
And there have been years that I have been less than enthusiastic about our continued membership in these organizations, but I do agree with Director Crumwoody's statements, and whatever pressure we can bring to bear in the upcoming year, I think is critical.
Any additional discussion? Well, I'm just thinking about how much I want to say. I think that I've been really frustrated this year. I'm willing to accept the wisdom and guidance of my other board members, especially with respect to this next year, and I accept the significance and the importance of participating in these organizations, and hopefully something will happen. Over this past year, my sense has been that I must be an incredibly ineffective communicator, in that I don't sense that I was able to make a difference in these organizations or in our legislature with respect to them understanding what I think is true, which is that this is an inequality. So I'm really, really hopeful that it happens next year, or my reluctance will raise its head again next year if I'm still here, with respect to participation. Is there any additional discussion? Director Snyder.
I think we've had significant support from Margaret and the UEN, but I still have yet really to see much in the way of support from the IASB, but I'm not involved in the legislative aspect of it as much as you are, Director Crumweedy, so I trust your knowledge in the area, but until they start aligning some of their priorities with our priorities, I still feel, as I said when we signed back on with them, that they need us more than we need them. Being a large district, it looks bad when large districts are not members of the IASB, but yet they don't still, through this whole inequity, still don't share our priority, and that does concern me.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Dickman.
In reference to your comment about potentially not being a very good communicator, I would like to point out that you are doing the equivalent of rolling a boulder up a hill. So I commend you for your work, and I encourage you to keep trying.
Thank you very much. Touche. Man, that's like 2 accolades in one night. That's something. Okay, if there's no additional discussion, we'll move on to policies. Director DeFau, would you lead us in that discussion, please?
There were, I believe, 4 or 5 policies included in the board packet for your review and consideration. For discussion this evening, I'm just going to walk through them one by one. 80301, internal board operations, development of policy. And this was brought forward to the policy committee originally by Mr. Schnaden, and it was and is an effort to try and get a handle on how we are going to inform our policy making and decision making around the impact of poverty on our district and on our students. And the recommendation was, through the discussion of Dr. Beagle's book, that we begin to evaluate our policies under that framework. And I think everyone came quickly to realize that to try and pick what policies may or may not be impacted, or that in turn might impact poverty, would be a rather daunting and large undertaking. Anyone who hasn't seen our policy book, it's about 5 inches thick and has a lot of information in it. So what the administration recommended was that we include, and it's in the second paragraph, and it is the second sentence, the board agrees to examine policies and practices through the framework of poverty to aid in decision-making that is equitable for all students. And so that as policies naturally come forward in the review cycle, that we would evaluate them under that context and with that context, rather than try and pull 50 or 60 policies and try and review those in one lump sum. So as we were having conversation about that and reviewing the policy in general, of course, the policy committee also found a couple items within the policy that we wanted to bring forward and also modify as we were considering that statement. And it was relevant to who in fact is responsible for policy committee or policy development. And the way it was stated originally, the administration was listed as the primary party responsible for policy development, and we felt that that was inaccurate and inappropriate. And so we rephrased it so that the policies of the Davenport Community School District are developed by the board policy committee in collaboration with the administration and are approved by board action. And then there's also an additional reference regarding administrative regulations, which are not always added to board policy, but the policy committee may frequently suggest that administrative regs be developed for a specific policy. And just an additional note that the board has no discretion as regarded to administrative regulations. That is the purview of the administration, not the board. So, comments? Director Crumwoody?
I just, I want to commend the policy committee for inserting the statement about examining the policy and practices through the framework of poverty. Of course, that being one of our priorities, and also with the initiatives that we're taking, and I think the poverty committee would highly commend you for your action on this.
And I do have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, the administration did bring that forward as a good way to address our concerns. But appreciate your feedback. I would also note that we are putting that statement on each agenda for the policy committee so that it's front of mind for us every time we sit down to review policies. Director Poole.
Well, for every point, there's a counterpoint, no doubt. And I appreciate you putting it up in front of the policy committee to take a look at as you do policies. I am concerned with the statement, and I'm at a bit of a loss as to explain why, but the board agrees to examine policy and practices through the framework of poverty to aid in decision-making that is equitable for all students. You know, when we bring out one particular framework that we look at our policies through and we say it's poverty, I mean, I have to wonder, what about the framework of prosperity? Because oftentimes it's the framework at which you look at things that determines the outcome. And so we talk so much about having one standard for our children. We don't have two standards for those who are in poverty and those that are not. But that framework of poverty just concerns me in that it puts us in a state where we're focusing on one framework, because I consider that we must have more than one framework that we look at our policies through. But when we hold out one particular framework, it concerns me that we are assuring equity for those students in poverty, but what about the others? So it's just a point for consideration. I understand what you're trying to say in that sentence, and I think it's noble, but I think what you mentioned here when you talked to Director Crumlity, that you would hold this statement out in front of the policy committee as you're making policy decisions is fine. But to hold out poverty as a framework of reference specifically concerns me a bit. So I'm not asking the policy committee to re-examine this, but I do appreciate your hearing my thoughts on it. And I realize that I'm probably one of 7 board members that has this concern, but I always like to get things out in the open for what it's worth.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I would welcome other members of the policy committee to, comment upon Director Kluhl's concern as well. But what I would say is that I felt, or I think that the committee was acting at what we thought was the direction of the larger board, in that the board wanted to ensure that there was deliberate and meaningful evaluation of policies as it related to impacting students and families of poverty. So I may be mistaken in that interpretation, but I did feel like that there was some direction to the committee in that regard.
And I guess I felt that that was a direction that the board said, look, this is one of our 2 priorities. This is a focus that we want to take a look at. But hold it out in board policy and say that this is the framework that we will look at policies from, I think takes it out of the scope of what the board said as priorities, which we have these 2 priorities, understand. But making it the single focus of a board policy seems to me somewhat constrained.
Other comments? Director Snyder?
I think when we looked at this as a policy committee, it wasn't as much about limiting things because of poverty. It was when we find opportunities for students, it's how do we promote inclusion? Such as one of the discussions we had was with instrumental music. We have means as a district to provide students that couldn't otherwise play an instrument. We can provide them with an instrument to, as I said earlier, to promote inclusion. It's find ways to get anybody who's interested in involved. It wasn't by any means to say, well, we're not going to do this because there might be some kids who can't. It's let's find a way for those that can't to allow them to. And I think that's where our focus is and was when we put this together.
And I would be fine if that were the message, because that's a message of prosperity. That's inclusion. That's positive. But the way this is worded is not.
Director Dickman?
I think that your concern comes from a presumption of exclusivity of the framework, whereas I think that we were reminding ourselves to look at it in an additional framework, because currently I think at least the majority of the board members come from a perspective of some sort of affluence, and I think that it's helpful to have a reminder to look at it from a different perspective, and a perspective that unfortunately many of our students struggle with.
Again, if it stated that it were from multiple perspectives, I would have no problem, but it says it's through the framework of poverty exclusively.
And I don't read it as exclusively, but I'm subjective based upon the reader. And yes, Director Johansson.
So it also says to aid in decision-making that is equitable for all students. It doesn't say to focus only on these. And the framework of poverty, earlier Mayor Gluba mentioned a book called Our Kids, and I'm right in the process of reading that, and it's really stunning when I read these things and try to understand. And I think it goes back to one of those old adages like walk a mile in my shoes. And in fact, I believe Director Klohl, you've mentioned things like that we need to put ourselves, we need to be where they are. We need to put ourselves in that other person's shoes. And when I think about what Director Dickman was talking about with respect to different SES, and I think most of us on the board probably are not at that level of poverty that really significantly can affect students' lives, and it is, to me, it's a profound way that it affects, not only in the way that we learn through Dr. Beagle, but there's some other things that I'm learning. And so I believe, too, as Director DeFau said, I don't think it's exclusive. And I understand your concerns. You've expressed them before, that maybe we use even the word poverty too much. But I think to at least think about that as we get into all these different policies. Because if we don't have something like this, and especially in the coming years, we're going to have different people on that policy committee. And we won't have a leader like Director DeFau that says, you know, we've got to think about poverty, think about 3 years out when you may not even be here. And without this kind of guidance, I think that the policy committee will have less direction to at least think like this. And so I think it's important to use these words. If there are better words, I would consider them, but I really like the idea of using the idea of examining policy and practices through the framework of poverty to aid in decision-making that is equitable for all students.
I don't know why I'm raising my hand, but I am. And then I know I need Mr. Schnaden, but would it be more acceptable to you if the language said the board is committed to examining policy and practices through the framework of poverty?
I like it better.
Okay. Because I think that's something that we obviously will be taking us back to the committee, so I would at least entertain the committee having that conversation. Mr. Schnaden.
I just wanted to add that, excuse me, I think Director Dickman was spot on with what I was thinking. This was just another lens to put every policy through. It wasn't exclusive. I loved your idea of putting both prosperity and poverty in the statement, because we should be looking at every policy. How do you grow? But we can't leave anybody behind. So this was our attempt at, we used the word framework, but lens was thrown around at the beginning in our conversation. We were looking for a way to say, let's not forget about those things that might get in the way of kids being successful. So we came up with this framework, but it was never my intentions for it to be exclusively only looked through the eyes of a poverty framework. It was supposed to be alongside it, I think, as Maria did.
Are there any more comments relevant to this policy?
Well, I think this has been a rather good discussion. I mean, what you've proposed is not what I would like to see, but it's certainly better than what I see here. I like the idea that Director Schneider talked about with multiple frames of reference, but that our board priority holds out poverty specifically, so that we will spend a lot of time looking through the framework of poverty. So if we could work it to the point where it was through multiple lenses, because I've been through the book review with you all, and I am totally on board with what we're doing with our priority. It's just how it's referenced here in this policy that concerns me. And Director Johansson is correct. I have brought up this issue of poverty as a word a number of times because it concerns me. Council member Edmund talked about it in a way that I am not proposing here tonight, and I thought his was to kind of put it by the side and not put it out in the forefront. I think putting it in the forefront is correct. We've done that with our priorities, but I just would like to be careful how we craft our policy so that it doesn't appear that we're a district of poverty, because we're a district of opportunity. And that's the message that I want to get across, and this seems to me to put us in that field of poverty. And while I recognize its importance, that's why I think that your comment about putting this up in front of every policy committee meeting, we're going to look at everything we do here with the framework of poverty, is exactly right. But to put it this way in board policy, well, I've said enough.
Director Johansson?
So I was thinking I almost feel like a politician tonight because I think my perspective is wavering. And during this discussion, I think about all these different things, and in fact, this book that I referenced earlier, Our Kids, talks about the significance of peer pressure from a high perspective and from a low perspective in any school, and it's like the peers will bring up those that are lower in a high school, and yet in a low performing school, it can be that the peers will bring those that are higher down lower. And I think about the words poverty and prosperity, and I think, well, we can't have we are committed to examine policy and practices through every framework because we don't even know every framework. But I was thinking about the ideal of looking through at least those two, through the framework of poverty and through the framework of prosperity or abundance. And that's a whole nother philosophy, that abundance kind of begets abundance. And even though I really like the words, and even if they were changed, one of the things that I think about this board is that when this policy is changed, it's probably going to be at least 5 years before it's changed again. And so I want to make sure it's really, really good. I like it the way it is, but that part of me that's wavering says, gosh, maybe we should add one more word.
Any other comments regarding this policy? No. Well,
Director DeFaul.
yes.
I'm just going to say again, I certainly support the wording. I think if we think about what could happen in the next few months, if we don't look through the framework of poverty, that it could all get lost. And what we've done up to this point could be lost. So I certainly support what you've done, and I commend you for what you've done on the policy committee with the wording that you have here.
Thank you. And
And I also appreciate what the policy committee has done. You know, we need not think alike to love alike. As you know, I mean, President Johansson loves us all, and I don't want you to think I don't love the policy committee, because I do. Thank you.
after all these years on the policy committee, I am more concerned when there aren't divergent opinions expressed at the board table than when there are. So there we go. So moving along to policy 101.02, under community relations and its media communications. And again, this is a policy that was reviewed by the administration and with modest changes recommended. The changes that you would see in red are changes that were recommended by the policy committee. And I think in our discussion, we felt it was important to differentiate the fact that the communication specialist is a spokesperson for the school district and not necessarily a spokesperson for the school board, because it is the president, in fact, that speaks for the school board and is the official spokesperson for the school board. The addition of the sentence in the last paragraph, any board member wishing to make, and I want to emphasize, a formal statement to the media will only do so after consulting with the board president. The reason that was inserted is that, as we know, all of us are frequently asked by the media to make comment about any number of issues that are in front of the board. And as an elected official, we certainly are entitled to our personal opinions. Emphasis again on personal opinions relevant to an issue that's before the board. However, formal statements are reserved for the president because we do not want someone to misconstrue a statement we are making as an individual to be representative of the board and the board's opinion. Again, that's reserved for the president. So we put that in there just as a clarifier, and I'll open it for comment.
Just thinking out loud about the board president, because you mentioned that specifically he doesn't represent the district. I just thought that was interesting. I had not thought about it that way, that he only represents the board. The superintendent works for the board. He represents district issues, certainly, but as the board president and the board is a level above the superintendent. I'm just thinking about that and whether the board president might not represent the district. Certainly by association he will. I'm just thinking out loud about that.
And I don't know that we had any specific conversation relevant to whether or not the president speaks for the district. We were more concerned about differentiating the district's media spokesperson as not representing the board.
Mm-hmm. Just a thought.
Any other? President Johansson?
Yeah, I have to say I've never thought about it going in that direction. I understand the thinking, and I think it's important that the district and the board be aligned. And I think our district and board are really aligned from my perspective. But we've all read about and heard about districts and boards that have not been aligned at all. And that could be, and has been, horrific. So I think it is worth thinking about. I think, but I think even philosophies, you know, the district and the board have different philosophies on certain matters when it comes to talking with the media. So I don't know anything more other than saying I like the idea, and yet I'll probably continue to support moving forward with these policies.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Moving ahead, community relations, community partners, 101.08. This was reviewed by the administration with no recommended changes. No comment? Okay. Lastly, 102, I believe lastly, no, not quite. 10205, community relations, citizen involvement in curriculum study. And in actuality, that first phrase, an attempt should be made by members of, was stricken by the policy committee, not the administration. So it should be in red. Because we thought it was rather wishy-washy to say we would attempt to involve citizens and students in the selection of instructional materials, and instead to state that the department will select citizens and student representatives to serve as members in advisory capacity. Any comments relevant to those changes? And then lastly, parent-teacher associations or organizations, and there were no recommended changes to this policy, 10201. Any comments? If not, that concludes the policy discussion for tonight. Thank you for feedback, and the policy committee meets next week, and we'll take everything under advisement.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to administrative reports.
I have none.
Are there, I do have 2 board requests. Are there any additional board requests? That's open forum. Anybody else? Okay, we have 2. First is from board member Dickman. Date is 6/8/15. Agenda item, have time for discussion of ideas that the board gets from attending the IASB conference within a month of the conference. Another from board member Dickman, date 6/8/15. Agenda item, have a discussion about if the administration should craft a framework to have sports and show choir count as physical education credit. Okay, thank you very much. I have another request. It's not exactly a board request. I'll make it one. Board member Johansson, date of request is 6/8/15. And the request is, don't forget that it's Joe's birthday today. And we've got cupcakes somewhere. I don't know where they are. Oh, up here. So... Huh? Oh, Joe's in the window. Everybody should know Joe. Happy birthday. So I would request that everybody wish Joe a happy birthday, have a cupcake, and so thanks a lot, Joe, and happy birthday. With that, I feel kind of lost because it isn't even 8 o'clock. That's probably it. So Mr. Scott has claimed responsibility for the short meeting since he's replacing Dr. Tate. Oh, here we go. Director Snyder.
I have two things that I'm not sure really where they'd fit in as a board report or it's not really a request, but I wanted to offer my condolences to the Duvall family for the loss of their daughter, Michaela, who was a 2013 graduate from Central, and both of her parents work in the district. And I also wanted to offer condolences to the her last name slips now. I just had it. Her name is Tori. She was a student at Sudlow who just finished Sudlow and was battling cancer for quite a while, was actually doing better, and was diagnosed with another form of cancer, which took her pretty quickly. So my condolences to her family as well.
Thank you, Director Snyder, and I think it wouldn't matter where you put those. Thanks for bringing them to our attention. Any additional board requests? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. This meeting is adjourned.